Hey everyone, I'm Kevin with Squatch Proof. Today in the garage, I'm going to show you how to install our winch front bumper on our Ranger XP 1000 Crew. So obviously to get our bumper installed, you're going to need to get this factory unit removed. For that, there's going to be 2 bolts underneath here, as well as 2 kind of straight back in this area that are pretty easy to access once we get this lower grill section removed. So this comes out pretty easy. There's just a tab here and here that you can kind of pull down on with your hand, and then just pull that out lightly and lift straight up. And you can kind of see there's just 2 tabs down here that nest into a couple like pin style things and hold that in place. Then with that out of the way, you're just going to need a 15mm socket and wrench to get the remaining hardware removed. So on the top 2, I'm just going to kind of loosen these up and remove the nut, leaving the bolt in place to support the bumper while we remove the lower hardware. So then the lower hardware, you can kind of access the side here with the wrench and use your socket from the bottom to remove these nuts. Then just lift those bolts right out of those hole locations, like so. Then to get the bumper removed, you can come back out front here, kind of just make sure you're supporting the bumper well and pull those 2 upper bolts out, and then grab a hold of it and lift the whole thing off the vehicle. So this is going to be the time before you get all the accessories in place in the bumper to install any tube work if you're doing so, or simply to install the black button head hardware to fill those holes. So for those of you not installing any tube work, you'll find the 3/8 black button heads along with 3/8 flange locking nuts, and you'll simply install those into the 6 holes on top of the bumper to just cover those and clean up that overall look. Then for those of you that are installing a tube, you'll obviously need the bumper and the tube. You will simply place it here on the top face of the bumper, and you can start by lining up the 2 exposed holes here across the back side and just dropping a couple bolts into those to kind of begin roughly aligning these 2. And then go ahead and thread the nuts onto the back. Once you have those 2 loosely in place, you can go ahead and just lay this down, and the remaining 4 bolts, 2 per side, are actually hidden fasteners. So the nuts are hidden up in the bottom of each of these vertical tubes. So you'll now just need the button head bolt, and you can reach through to the back side of the bumper here and begin threading each of those in. So then once you get all of those started by hand, you grab a 7/32 hex to tighten things up. Now depending on what you have for tools, you may need to get just a little bit creative to get these 2 outside bolts tight. So you can see I have here a 3/8 drive 7/32 hex on obviously a 3/8 ratchet, and then also a 1/4 drive. You can see the difference in height between those 2. So depending on what your 1/4 inch ratchet looks like and the profile of the head on it, you may be able to simply get in there with something like this and tighten those up. However, if you're still having trouble getting your tools in there, you can just take a 1/4 inch wrench, slide that over the larger hex portion of this hex socket here, and then slide that assembly down in here, get it lined up and into that button head bolt to tighten things up. So then just as an example, because it may be a little difficult to see once I get both hands and the tools down in this corner, you can simply put this assembly into the top of your button head and loosen or tighten these as needed. And then the last thing you have to do on the bumper itself before it can go on the vehicle is install the 2 M10 clip nuts here into the upper mounting holes. So with those, they're just going to slide right over the back flange, and you just want to make sure that you have the threaded nut portion of this in toward the center of the bumper. Now I'm going to start on the front here with the center logo cover plate. This should be pretty easy. It's just going to line up one way, And then it'll be a matter of finding the shorter number 10 button head bolts along with serrated flange nuts in your hardware pack. So get that lined up, and then you can get all 8 of these loosely installed before you tighten anything down. So then to tighten those up, you'll just need an 1/8 inch hex and possibly a 3/8 socket if those nuts are spinning on the back side. So for the 2 side lights, you're going to be using the longer number 10 hardware in your bolt pack. And then if you're not actually installing lights at this time, you'll just have these cover trim plates to install, which are just like the front. Lay them over there and install that button head hardware. Now, if you are going to be installing lights out here at this time, they're going to be 6-inch single row LEDs, and it'll accommodate anything out there as long as its overall width is narrower than 8 1/8. So the way these mount, you're going to have 2 of these brackets per side. They just look like the one I have here. And basically you're going to mount them to the side of your light using the light manufacturer's hardware in this same orientation. And once you have the brackets mounted to the light, it's just going to kind of be a matter of stacking these up out here on the wing. So you can grab your cover plate, get that lined up with the holes, and drop in a couple bolts to hold it in place. And then reach in from the back and get those 2 bolts lined up on that light mounting bracket. I'm just going to drop these other 2 in out here to help with alignment. And then it's just a matter of installing more of those serrated flange nuts on the back side. Once you have all that hardware started, it's just a matter of centering your light up in the opening and tightening this up. And then you can just repeat that process over on the other side. Now behind this center opening, we've also put in mounting provisions for a 20-inch LED light bar. So I'll flip this around and show you how those mount now. So here in the back side of the bumper, you can see this horizontal slot here on our vertical upright section. There's going to be one of those on each side to accommodate the light bar. Now these are about 22 inches apart, so as long as your light is narrower than that, they should fit in here no problem, and then they can be installed to those slots using the light manufacturer's hardware. Now if you are installing a winch, this is going to be the time to bolt that in as well. So this winch plate in the bumper is going to have hole patterns to accommodate most common winches on the market. However, you can see we're going to be installing a worn axon in this bumper today. Just to give you some numbers for reference, it's about 16 inches between these vertical uprights, and then you've got about 6.5 inches of usable space between the winch plate and the light with the light installed, and then obviously much more if you're not running a center LED. Now after you get all those accessories installed, we can work towards getting this installed on the vehicle. Then on the frame of the vehicle in these upper mount locations, you'll want to install the provided spacers along with the longer M10 bolts. Make sure you have the washers on these. So these spacers are just going to slide up in the center of the mount, and then you're just kind of pre-installing these so that they're in when the bumper goes on. So we just kind of push that through and make sure that it's pretty much flush with the end of the mount here. We'll do the same thing over here on the other side. Now before our bumper goes on, you're also going to need to reinstall that front grille section, as there won't be enough space to get this slid in behind it after the bumper's in place. This should just drop back on its lower locating tabs and then snap up into place. So I'm going to be using our transmission jack to kind of support the weight of the bumper while I get it slid up here in between these 2 frame mounts, and then I'll kind of reach in from the side to start this 10mm hardware. Now if you don't have a trans jack on hand, you can also just use the help of a friend at this stage in the install, but this should kind of slide up and on here relatively easily. And then we can reach around the side and install those bolts. So then you just want to be really confident that you got those upper bolts started and threading into those clip nuts. However, leave them loose for now until you get the bottom hardware installed. So down here, that's going to be your shorter 10mm bolts. Again, washer on the bolt, and then you'll want to run these from the bottom up for maximum clearance. And then on the top side here, you'll install one more washer and the provided nylock nut. Now once all the bumper mounting bolts are started, you can kind of begin tightening things up. We're going to start up top here. As you can see, this is pretty tight to get in here and get those tightened up. The best combination I've found is this short 17mm socket on our kind of compact small 3/8 drive ratchet. That fits in here pretty nicely and gives you plenty of room to maneuver it around. You may also be able to get in here with a flex ratcheting wrench or even a larger flex head ratchet if that's what you have to work with. So then down here on the lower hardware, you'll just need a 17mm socket and 17mm wrench. So then if you haven't done so already, you can go ahead and install your winch ferry lead before we move on to this lower cover plate. So this is going to use the same number 10 hardware as up top, and then it's just a matter of lining it up and getting everything installed. So for your first bolt, you can kind of just swing it off to the side so you have full access in here to get that started. So then you can just kind of swing this up and begin installing the remaining hardware by reaching through these openings to install the nut on the back side. And then just make sure you get all your hardware started loosely before you tighten anything up. So now you know what all it takes to get this bumper installed. Now, if you do still have any questions, you can always check out our website and the product page for more information at squatch-proof.com, or you can always give us a phone call at 269-323-1162.